We want to get a closer look now from the Pentagon. Joining us with more on the U.S. military action in Libya, CBS News national security correspondent David Martin. David, good morning. Can you give us a better idea? We heard a little bit from Mark there, but what exactly are the targets at this point?
Basically, they're targets of opportunity. The pre-planned attacks to take down Gaddafi's air defenses are essentially done. And so what's happening now is that U.S. and allied aircraft are patrolling this no-fly zone, looking for Libyan ground units that are threatening rebel-held cities, and going after any location that can be identified as serving as a command center for those Libyan units on the ground. And that is apparently what happened last night with the attack on that building in Gaddafi's compound. U.S. Intelligence picked up signals that that was being used as a command center, and there was a British submarine off the coast of Libya, and that submarine launched this cruise missile against that building.
So in general, not just that one particular strike, but in general, is the consensus so far that it's been successful?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's successful so far, but that's the operative word. I mean, the air defenses have been effectively disabled, and that means that aircraft can patrol the no-fly zone without having to worry about a surface-to-air missile being shot at them. And the forces on the ground, the Libyan ground forces, have no air cover. They have two choices, which is to retreat or surrender. But how does this end? That is the question. How long does this take? And I think if Gaddafi were to remain in power in Tripoli while the rebels got back all the cities they once held in the eastern part of the country, and you had a divided Libya, I think most U.S. officials would call that a failure.
We will be watching closely to see what we are approaching in terms of an endgame. David Martin at the Pentagon this morning. We want to look now from the military operation to the politics of that possible regime change, which David just hinted at. And for that, we turn to CBS News national security analyst Juan Zarate. Juan, good morning. That situation that that David just laid out, saying that a divided Libya would essentially be seen as a failure, what would be seen as a success?
Well, the administration is talking in two different ways. They're talking about a limited mission trying to stop Gaddafi's march against his civilians, a humanitarian mission. So in some ways, a success in that regard would be implementation of the no-fly zone, implementation of the Security Council resolution, and stopping Gaddafi's march on Benghazi. That said, as David indicated, the real objective here seems to be toppling Gaddafi, though no one seems to want to talk about that, and certainly that's laying in the works here as we talk about the next steps.
And no one wants to say that. He's clearly not just going to get up and walk away. There are two things at play here, though. There was a lot of hesitation, it seemed initially, about going in here, about there being any sort of U.S.-led efforts, because once you are in, you're in it for the long haul, essentially. It's that whole you break it, you bought it. So how long is the U.S. going to be involved here?
Well, clearly the administration wants us to be short and sweet. They want to limit this mission. But the reality is, once you're in, as you said, once you break it, you're in it, and you've got to handle the situation. And it's not quite clear how this ends. If Gaddafi stays in power, we're likely to see a cat-and-mouse game of containment. If he's toppled in some way by the rebels or some other active force, then we've got perhaps chaos on our hands with a transitional council that we're not really familiar with.
There's that, and there's also the threats that Gaddafi has made about terrorism toward the West. How much of a valid concern is that right now?
Well, I think given the history of Gaddafi, given the fact that he was responsible for the Libya discotheque bombing in 1986, behind Pan Am 103 bombing, we have to take it seriously. I don't think he's in a position right now to start launching attacks, for example, on the U.S., but he's a cornered badger here, and if he's struggling for survival and if he's able to negotiate a stalemate, we have to be very concerned about his capabilities.
We'll be watching it closely. Juan, thanks. Juan Zarate in Washington this morning.
Thanks, sir.